And only a tiny bit of this 12th chapter of the Darkangel left to go. Ariel has snuck the wraiths into the Darkangel's room, which turned out was a child's bedroom with all of the toys still there in the toy box, untouched. And she gave the Darkangel the drink from the horse's hoof. He was sort of suspicious, but not suspicious enough not to drink. But it doesn't look like anything has happened, and we will begin at the top of the paragraph where I cut off in the last video. He stopped, seemingly amused at her retreat. "What do you mean?" he asked, toying with the leaden vials at his throat. Ariel eyed his lean white fingers, imagined their strength, fingers that snapped bats' bones and tore out lizards' tongues, throttled his brides to death that he might drink off their blood, steal away their souls, and tear out the hearts for the gargoyles. Ariel felt faint. "Surely it was some fruit of my garden," he said. She held him off with her eyes, felt herself growing desperate. He was no weaker, seemed if anything stronger than before. A slow panic crept over her. The Duro had been mistaken. The Darkangel was invincible. No poison could touch him. He was frowning slightly now, since she did not answer. "The Duro gave it to me," she said. She could not think of any lie. The vampire looked at her, uncomprehending. "Who?" He started, but stopped short. His skin, always before so translucent fair, was suddenly waxy. He laid a hand at his throat and swallowed hard. His wings, no longer folded, poised tensely, like a dozen hawks ready to stoop. His frown deepened. His lips tightened into a grimace. Then he wrapped his arms about his middle with a cry. "Poison? You have poisoned me. I burn." He sank down on one knee, his face twisted in pain. Ariel shrank back from him, appalled. She had not known it would be like this. The Duro had never told her the poison would bring him pain. She had imagined he would fall insensate at the first sip. The Darkangel's head jerked up. The leaden necklace clinked, and she saw his eyes, wild and bright. "After the great honor I have done you," he cried hoarsely, "choosing you at first as my servant, now as my wife, this is your repayment." He gasped and twisted, clutching his waist, his face contorted as in agony. Ariel pressed her hands over her mouth to keep from screaming. "I am on fire," he said through clenched teeth, panting with the effort. "You have killed me, but you not live to celebrate it." He struggled to his feet, his dark wings thrashing wildly. Their wind stirred the gauze hangings, flattened her sari's folds against her body, made the oil lamps gutter, but for all their desperate fury they could scarcely help him rise. He clutched at the bed curtain, reached out his free hand toward Ariel, leaned forward to enfold her in his wings. She shrank away from him, threw up her arm to keep him away. One cold, biting hand of the Icarus closed over her wrist. Ariel heard herself scream as he dragged her toward him. She snatched at the dagger, hidden in her gown, but before she could draw it, the wraiths appeared, swiftly, silently. They fleeted from the shadows, the folds of the bed curtains, the seams of the walls. The Icarus hand went suddenly limp. Ariel saw him start. She slipped free of him as the wraiths surrounded him, stood ringed about him, keeping him from Ariel. The vampire cried out at the sight of them, threw up his arms as if to ward them away. "What are you doing here, my wives?" he cried. "You are so hideous to look at. Keep off!" The wraiths drifted in a slow circle around him. "We will not keep off," they said. "You have chosen us. We are yours." "Why are you so ugly?" he wailed. "Why do you torment me? Why are all my wives so ugly?" His strength was slipping from him now. His wings ceased their buffeting. He sank slowly to his knees. "Stolen our souls," said the wasted women. "What could we have become but hideous?" "Drunk of our blood," another one said, "but left us just wit enough to suffer our fate, horrible suffering. Traitors, the Icarus gasped. I favored you above all others. Torn out our hearts, the Wraith women hissed. See what your favor has brought to us, liar, pillager, murderer, thief. The vampire leaned upon one hand now. The other one clutched his side as he stared at the faces of the withered creatures stepping slowly past him. Ariel saw a last gleam of defiance light his eye. What does it matter? He whispered, his breath faint and harsh. What could any of your worthless lives matter? I am the Darkangel, 1,000,000 times above you. I shall rule this world. His ranting whisper weakened further. My mother has promised me. Never, answered his wives, and silenced him. The vampire sagged, slumped forward to the floor. Ariel watched the circling rays. If he protested still, she could no longer hear him. He struggled feebly for a moment on his side, then with a jerk rolled over onto his back. His wings crumpled beneath him, his rigid frame relaxed. Ariel found herself clutching her own throat as his gasps grew fainter. His head turned from side to side and was still, his colorless eyes closed, slowly opened. He heaved a deep, shuddering sigh. His eyelids slid shut then and did not open again. He was breathing only very lightly now. He was not dead. Ariel felt all of her energy draining from her. She sank down very slowly and leaned back against the cold, wet stone of the wall. The blade, adamant, lay hot and sharp against her beneath the fabric of her gown. She felt the fine metal chain pressing into her neck. She did not look at the fallen Darkangel. She did not want to see him. Ariel closed her eyes for a long moment to rest. And that's the end of chapter 12.